What's going on, Destination Devi fam? That's better.
You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
What's going on, Destination Devi fam? It's your boy Jay Rich. I'm back. I'm back for y'all. I missed you guys. You know, we haven't talked for a minute. I've been a little bit busy, but don't worry, Ray's holding it down. He got you. This is his thing. I just pop in every now and then to give you a little tidbit, to, give you a little bit of information, something I'm thinking about, something that's been on my mind lately. And the player I want to talk about right now is Lamar Jackson, because I really don't know what to do with him right now. I don't know if I should be selling him. Is this who he is now? Is he just going to be a decent quarterback? He still has that great rushing floor, but he's been turning the ball over like crazy. I know he's had a few tough matchups. He's had to play some good defenses, but at this point, it's just unacceptable, man. He can't even hit Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown is frustrated. Mark Andrews owners are frustrated, although I will say I tried to warn y'all about him. He wasn't a product of volume. He was a product of touchdowns. And yes, some players score a lot of touchdowns like my boy Calvin Ridley, but not everyone can do that. Not everyone's like that. Not everyone's got that Ridley swag, you know what I'm saying? But this is about Lamar Jackson. And who is Lamar Jackson? Is he really a QB12, like a barely QB1 kind of guy? He's QB12 right now in points per game. He's been fine. And so I think we need to discuss is how do we feel about him in Dynasty? Is he even a top 5 quarterback? You got Patrick Mahomes, you got Russell Wilson, you got Dak Prescott, who I believe is still a top 5 quarterback. You got Kyler Murray, who's probably right on Mahomes' butt right now. When you're talking about who's your top Dynasty quarterback, Kyler Murray is filthy. He's doing what Lamar Jackson should be doing, except he also has a rocket of an arm, and that's why I'm not worried about some touchdown regression, rushing regression out of Kyler Murray, because if he needs to throw for 4,500, he'll do it. If he needs to run for 1,000 yards, he'll do it. Where Lamar's been a little bit one-dimensional. Teams have found ways to cover him, to take his rushing ability away, and they're closing down those passing lanes, forcing him into bad throws. But what do we do with Lamar now? Because you see the ascension of Justin Herbert, who is a star right now in the fantasy community and should be a really good quarterback going forward because he has great weapons. He has Keenan Allen. He has Mike Williams. He has Hunter Henry if they choose to keep him. Austin Eckler's not even playing right now, and still Justin Herbert's playing great, and he's a great weapon for Herbert. They got some running backs there like Joshua Kelly, Justin Jackson getting it done, filling it in. It's really that defense that's been letting down the Chargers. But the problem with the Baltimore Ravens is that defense is so good. It hasn't forced Lamar to really have to play that hard on offense. A few games they've blown out teams, like completely blown them out by 20 plus points. The game was over early. Lamar went out of the game, but it's not like last season. They're not scoring touchdowns because of him. He's just kind of, handing it off to the running backs, doing whatever he has to do to help the team win. And the team's winning most games. But when you see him play against a team like the Steelers and he can't get it done, you're like, well, what Lamar is this? Is this rookie Lamar who got dismantled by a Chargers defense in the playoffs? Or is this the MVP we saw last season? And it's really difficult to talk about for fantasy because I almost want to put a quarterback like Josh Allen ahead of him. Josh Allen has a great rushing floor, and we've seen he can air it out. It's at what point is Lamar going to say, look, I have to become a better passer to be a good quarterback in the NFL going forward? And he needs to stop leaning on that defense and start putting up some points, but he just doesn't have to. And it's really, really difficult for me to decipher is like he really doesn't have to put up more than 20 or 25 points most games. Like that, if you look at the game log, that's what it'll tell you. If that defense plays to what its potential is, he probably has to put up maybe 20 points, and they're probably going to win that game. And so it sucks for fantasy because he doesn't need to put up points. If he hands it off to the running backs and doesn't rush one in, he's probably not throwing a touchdown, or he's throwing a pick, and he's been fumbling a lot, especially recently. So it's just like, oh man, what do I do with Lamar Jackson? Do I trade him for a Justin Herbert, a Joe Burrow, a Tua? Because he's probably still valued similarly to those guys, maybe even higher. And I don't know if that's a bad move because Lamar can be so good, but at the same time, he's just been so average. And so it's like, what do I do with this guy? Is he still have that MVP fight in him like he did before? Or is he just kind of coasting now? And there are some QBs who do just coast. Like, they don't have to do a whole lot to win games. Like we saw with Tua last week, that defense carried them. And Tua looked like, he looked average, looked fine, but he didn't have to do anything to win the game. And this is Lamar like almost every single game. And in the games where he has had to perform, he hasn't got it done. And for me, it's, do I trade that? Do I trade away that MVP? And I feel like that's such a difficult question for us to answer right now. And I want some of your guys' input on it too. Because if you could trade away Lamar Jackson, what do you want in return? Do you want a first-round pick? Do you want 2 first-round picks? We're talking about, more likely superflex leagues, not so much single QB leagues, because he's definitely not valuable there. But in a superflex league, what do you want for Lamar Jackson? Is it 2 firsts? Can you even get 2 firsts for Lamar Jackson? Because no one's trading for him because he's barely even a QB1. He's not winning you weeks like we need him to, even in a superflex league. You look at Aaron Rodgers and how he's playing. Would you rather have Aaron Rodgers than Lamar Jackson? Probably not because of age, but I think some of these younger quarterbacks, someone might take Joe Burrow over Lamar Jackson because that volume is insane. Justin Herbert, same deal. Like he's producing at QB5 numbers on points per game. QB5. And yeah, that fluctuates a little bit, but if Lamar doesn't turn it on soon, we're going to be questioning if he's even a QB1. Like, because he's just, that volume is so low, like we saw last season. He just ended up getting a lot of yardage. He scored a lot of touchdowns, both on the ground and through the air. Now that touchdown regression has come so far down to earth, we're seeing that he doesn't need to get a lot to really help that team win. So how does that help us? How do we navigate these waters as fantasy owners? And kind of why I like to lean on people who throw passes, and why a lot of people don't like to lean on rushing quarterbacks, because that's the problem. You have that floor, but if the passing never gets better, that floor is almost meaningless. Like, yeah, Josh Allen was great when he was a borderline QB1, but couldn't pass very well. But now you add that passing game, he's a QB1, he's like a top 6 QB. But with Lamar, it's like, is that ever going to come? Are we ever going to see him throw for more than 3,600 yards in a season? Because I don't see him ever being a 4,000-yard quarterback. And you look at how much it's suffering for all of his receivers. Mark Andrews is playing bad. Or Mark Andrews isn't getting the stats we hoped he would get. Hollywood Brown isn't doing much. Devin Duvernay is involved, but still not very viable for fantasy. Miles Boykin, same deal. Nick Boyle, I believe, is doing better than Mark Andrews right now in fantasy. It's just like not a whole lot to really make that offense. Even J.K. Dobbins hasn't quite done enough because Gus Edwards is scoring touchdowns. The Ravens as a whole are a fantasy disaster right now. I don't know what to make of any of them, other than I know that J.K. Dobbins is probably the best running back in the draft class. He has the highest missed tackle rate, and for some reason still isn't on the field enough. But we know that he's good. He's already proven it to us. We've seen it on the field. We've seen it in some of his analytics. But outside of that, do we even want Lamar Jackson? He's not running as much. He's not throwing as much. Maybe they're having short fields. Maybe he's turning the ball over. But for whatever reason, it just hasn't quite got rolling for Lamar. He hasn't quite figured it out. He hasn't quite adjusted to what defenses are throwing at him. And it's causing me to second guess, do I really want Lamar Jackson as my quarterback? Is he my QB1 for fantasy? Because he was the QB2, like locked and loaded pretty much. If you weren't taking Patrick Mahomes, you were taking Lamar Jackson right after that. Guaranteed. It wasn't a discussion about Kyler Murray over Lamar Jackson or Dak Prescott. Both of which those quarterbacks have outplayed Lamar Jackson by a mile this season. It's not even close. Dak Prescott probably has almost as many points as Lamar Jackson. He hasn't played since like week 5. And then you look at Kyler Murray, who's been a QB1 every single week this season. And it's just like, I can't believe this is even a discussion, but this is the problem, is like we were leaning on that rushing floor. We're leaning on him, scoring lots of touchdowns. And I think as a community, we never really acknowledged just how bad it could get. And it's not that he's been bad, like bad is relative, because he's been a capable quarterback. They still have a lot of wins. They're still trending the right direction and leaning on that defense like the Ravens typically do. But Lamar hasn't shown enough to make us believe that he's still the real deal. He can still get it done. He can still at least be clutch, be good in crunch time, or win a game when they need him to win a game, because he hasn't done that. He looked like crap against the Chiefs, and he looked like shit against the Steelers. So those are the 2 games that we're going to see them play in the divisional round or in the championship if they somehow make it there. So why would we believe that he's a capable quarterback, even for fantasy, if he's not going to show up in those big games like we need him to? because those are the games that are fantasy productive. If he's going to have a big game against the Chiefs, that's what we want to see because they need to score points to win that game. Games against Cincinnati, games against Detroit, games against even Cleveland, he doesn't need to show up for those games because the defense will force a few turnovers. He'll have some short fields, kick some field goals, hand off to the running backs. He's not going to do a whole lot. But in these bigger games against the Steelers, against the Chiefs, where he can put up fantasy points because they need to score, he can't get it done. And that's my biggest issue with Lamar right now. He's not getting it done when we need him to get it done. He's not scoring enough fantasy points. And he really hasn't been good enough even as a quarterback of the Ravens. Like I said, they're winning games, and that's good. But he hasn't quite figured out how to adjust his game to beat these new defenses that are getting thrown at him this season. So I just want some of your opinions on that. Who are some of the quarterbacks you would take for Lamar Jackson right now? Are you looking to make that swap for this quarterback plus a first, this quarterback plus a second, to hopefully secure some value heading into this offseason if he really never picks it up? Because then where does he fall? Is he going to fall as a QB5, QB6? And I honestly don't know if he will. Coming into 2019, he was like probably QB12, QB13, kind of like he is right now, because people weren't sure if he could take that next step, if that rushing floor was going to help him. But he threw a lot of touchdowns this season that he's not throwing right now. So I think he could fall into that trap where he may be behind some guys that we don't expect. And, taking a guy like Josh Allen over him, I don't think it's crazy because Josh Allen is at least throwing the ball downfield, throwing for touchdowns to good receivers. And Lamar just hasn't done that. He just hasn't done that. So I just wanted to have that discussion. It's been on my mind. I wanted to bring it to you guys, ask some questions, hopefully get some of your thoughts on that, talk about it amongst the community and see what we do with Lamar Jackson, see the kind of moves we're making. If you guys have made any trades for Lamar Jackson, drop it in the comments, or if you traded him away, let me know because I want to know kind of what you guys are thinking about this because it's been on my mind. It's been difficult for me as an owner of Lamar Jackson and quite a few dynasty teams to see what we do with him. And I'm holding him right now. I don't want to sell him, but I think if someone, gave me the right offer, I wouldn't hesitate to move him because I don't think he's untouchable. The way I think Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson to some extent, Deshaun Watson to some extent, Pat Mahomes obviously are they're blue chip, untouchable guys right now. I don't know if Lamar is that. I really don't. And it hurts me to say it, but he needs to be better, both for the Ravens and for fantasy, but most importantly, we don't know if he's ever going to need to be that good for the Ravens to win games. Thank you guys for watching this video. I wanted to just talk to you about it quickly. It was a little bit longer piece than I hoped for, but I hope you guys got some value out of it. Let me know what kind of moves you're making for Lamar Jackson, if you traded for him, if you traded him away. Obviously, the deadline's coming up, so these are conversations that we have to have if we're looking to make upgrades at quarterback positions or move some assets for draft picks. These are some conversations I like to have right now because it's really relevant to what's going on in Dynasty. But let me know what you guys think about Lamar Jackson going forward. Jay Rich out. Follow me on Twitter at your boy Jay Rich. Check out more videos. Check out the weekly content Ray puts out all the time. Destination Devy is here to make you Devy and Dynasty better. I'm out.
Production.